Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 233 based on novel. So let's start. The 10,000 feet figure stood in the sky. All the energy bodies in the heavenly tomb under it shrunk and trembled. The frightening pressure seemed to be about to cause their bodies to explode. Xiao Xian's body completely faded in the sky. Those old eyes were filled with a pleased expression as they vanished. The huge figure continued to kneel in the sky after Xiao Xian's body paled. It was a long time later before that huge body slowly shrunk. Finally, it turned into the size of an ordinary person and quietly stood in the sky. Ancestor. Xiao Yang looked towards the spot where Xiao Xian had vanished and muttered softly. He extended his hand and gently clenched it onto the empty space. An invisible light spot that an ordinary person could not see appeared in his hand after he clenched it. This was Xiao Xian's life imprint. Only those whose soul had stepped into the DI state could see such a life imprint. Otherwise, even if one's Do Chi had reached the advanced 9-star Do Sheng class, one would still be unable to detect this extremely mysterious existence. From a certain point of view, the current Xiao Xian could be basically considered to have completely vanished. That ultimate expert, who had once dominated the Do Chi continent, had completely disappeared from the world. However, this was not the case from Xiao Yang's point of view after he had stepped into the D state. This life imprint might perhaps be able to bestow life to Xiao Xian again. However, even after having his soul advance into the D state, Xiao Yang was unable to do something like this. Perhaps, he would only be able to do it after he had truly advanced into the legendary Do D class in the future. Regardless of what it was, there was ultimately still a hope. This hope might be distant, but it had not completely disappeared. The invisible life imprint slowly rose in Xiao Yang's palm. After which, it entered his brow and was guarded by his world-like vast and mighty spiritual strength. Perhaps, after a long time, this old man, who had given up everything for the Xiao clan, would be able to once again appear in this world. Xiao Yang gently sighed after keeping the life imprint. He lowered his head and glanced at the heavenly tomb world. Although only 2 months had passed, it had only been less than half a month in the Central Plains. However, Xiao Yang had in reality spent nearly 2 years within the heavenly tomb. He had only managed to completely refine the heavenly tomb soul after spending 2 years. Fortunately, the tomb within the heavenly tomb had a different flow of time. Otherwise, there was no telling just how the outside world would have changed by the time he exit from his retreat in 2 years' time. D-state soul. Xiao Yang gently clenched his hand. His eyes looked into the distance and a strange state of mind rose from within his heart. This feeling was as though the entire heavenly tomb was under his control. Explode. Xiao Yang extended his hand. He suddenly grabbed at the empty space. A stone mountain hundreds of thousands of feet from him exploded into dust without any warning. His spiritual strength had spread over every part of the heavenly tomb with just a mere thought. The area which it could cover was many times greater than what Xiao Yang could achieve in the past. His attack would be able to reach any spot that his soul could reach even if it was tens of thousands of kilometers away. The D-state soul and the perfect heavenly state only had the difference of a single step. However, one was the sky and the other was the earth. There was no way to compare the two. Only after truly experiencing the great strength of the DI state would one understand why many were unable to leap through this universe-like barrier despite trying to do so all their lives. This was because the two. One was a god while the other was a mortal. Perhaps it is time to leave. Xiao Yang's body was suspended in the sky. Xiao Xian had already vanished. There was nothing in this heavenly tomb that he could not bear to part with. However, due to him having devoured the heavenly tomb soul, Xiao Yang could sense that he had an absolute control over this realm. In other words, even after he left the Jiyu realm in the future, he would be able to easily open a spatial tunnel that leads into the heavenly tomb realm from anywhere. Moreover, anyone who wished to tear open a spatial crack and enter the heavenly tomb could only do so with his permission. From a certain point of view, Xiao Yang was just like the owner of this heavenly tomb. He could decide on who could enter and exit it. Xiao Yang felt a little surprise at this accompanying gift. Although the rich energy of this heavenly tomb was of little use to him with his current strength, the difference in the flow of time as compared to the Central Plains was quite attractive. After all, it was able to greatly increase the effectiveness of one's training. This would be an extremely good aid to both him and his faction. I have saved the need to build my own realm. Xiao Yang smiled. He was quite satisfied with this accompanying gift. After all, if he wished to build his own realm, it would not possess such a unique ability. This was because such an ability was something that only an elite Do-Di possessed. Xiao Yang suppressed the emotions within his heart. His finger gently drew past the space in front of him. A spatial crack line appeared. His eyes once again swept over this realm before he stepped into the crack. The space wiggled and he disappeared in front of the countless pairs of eyes. A couple of figures were standing in the air above the vast mountains of the Jiyu realm. All of them were frowning as they looked at the water ripple like slowly fluctuating space. Clan head Jiu Yuan, what has happened? Lei Ying looked at Jiu Yuan beside him and asked in surprise. Half a month has passed. If Xiao Yang do not come out, the Han clan might really end up killing his father. Yang Jin by the side also opened his mouth and said. Xiao Yang did not show any signs of coming out ever since he had entered the heavenly tomb. Moreover, the day that they had agreed with the Han clan was about to arrive. The heavenly tomb has already been shut. The spatial tunnel of this place is also completely blocked. I have tried to open a spatial tunnel earlier, but I was repelled by a force. That feeling was as though the current heavenly tomb possessed an owner. Jiu Yuan frowned tightly. The words he spoke greatly shocked everyone. There was only one owner of the heavenly tomb. It was the elite Dodi, who had created it. The heavenly tomb had remained without an owner for so many years. Although they had once thought of refining it, all of them had failed without exception. A realm created by a Dodi was far from what they were able to control. Hence, even with the mental fortitude of the two of them, they involuntarily felt some disbelief after hearing Jiu Yuan's words. However, they understood that given Jiu Yuan's strength, it was naturally impossible that he was mistaken. In that case, Xiao Yang Gge. Zun Er's pretty face became a little pale after hearing those words from beside Jiu Yuan. She was uninterested to know whether the heavenly tomb has an owner. However, Xiao Yang was currently inside. How would Xiao Yang return if Jiu Yuan was unable to open a spatial tunnel? I will try again. Jiu Yuan's expression was a little gloomy. With his current strength, even if the heavenly tomb really did possess a mysterious owner, it would be impossible for the latter to prevent him from entering it. The seal formed by Jiu Yuan's hands changed after his voice sounded. Immediately, the energy around them swiftly turned into a 10,000 feet large giant energy hand in the sky. After which, he grabbed ruthlessly at the fluctuating space. A huge dark shadow covered the surrounding mountain range. The huge energy palm was extremely quick. In a flash, it had appeared outside the space. However, the former was about to smash onto the space when the latter's surging speed suddenly became even more intense. Soon after, a fluctuation swiftly spread from within and heavily collided with the huge palm. It actually forcefully scattered this attack from Jiu Yuan. This sudden unexpected change caused everyone to be dull. What kind of strength did Jiu Yuan possess? He was one of the strongest individuals in this world. Even someone as strong as Lei Ying would have to use all of his strength in order to resist this attack. Yet, this strike had actually been scattered from a mere fluctuation. This is spiritual fluctuation. How is this possible? The shock continued for an instant before Lei Ying and Yang Jin recovered and exclaimed, pushing back a palm strike from Jiu Yuan by relying only on a spiritual fluctuation. Just what kind of terrifying spiritual strength was it? Something is wrong. Set up formation. The three immortals of the Jiu clan behind Jiu Yuan suddenly had grave expressions. They let out a low cry and many experts from the Jiu clan swiftly flew out from the surrounding mountain range. Do Chi surged and swiftly gathered. Sir, may I know who are you? This is the Jiu clan. We are only here to receive someone and do not have any other plans. Jiu Dao cried out loud with a solemn expression after the formation was set up. A spatial tunnel slowly appeared in the fluctuating space after Jiu Dao's voice sounded. Immediately, a figure slowly stepped forward in front of the many anxious eyes belonging to the experts from the Jiu clan. Isn't this lineup a little too great to simply receive someone? That figure stepped out from the spatial tunnel. At a glance, he saw the formation being placed in the sky and the many experts from the Jiu clan waiting solemnly throughout the mountains. His expression quickly became a little interesting. Xiao Yang. Everyone was stunned after seeing the figure stepping out from the spatial tunnel. There was a top expert who had exchanged blows with the clan head earlier. We were just, Jiu Dao sighed in relief. With a wave of his hand, he got everyone to relax slightly. He smiled towards Xiao Yang. Before he could finish speaking, however, he saw a shock suddenly surging onto Jiu Yuan's face. Immediately, he ceased speaking. The one who had fought earlier was you? Jiu Yuan's eyes stared at Xiao Yang. A great storm rose within his heart. Everyone, including Zun Er, Yang Jin and Lei Ying, had stunned faces the moment they heard these words. The subsequent reply from Xiao Yang caused these stunned expressions to become even denser. That. I think so, D-State Soul, how is this possible? Everyone was stunned as they looked at the young figure, who had exited from the spatial tunnel. Even with Jiu Yuan's calmness, his face was still involuntarily filled with a disbelief. Although a D-State Soul was not as shocking as a true elite Dodi, but it was ultimately related to the latter. It should be known that even the souls of those experts like Yang Jin and Lei Ying, who had reached the 8-star Do Shun class, had yet to reach this level. Moreover, all of them clearly remembered that half a month ago, Xiao Yang's soul was still at the perfect heavenly state. Half a month. What could be done in half a month? A brief period of training could swiftly exhaust half a month's time. Yet, Xiao Yang's spiritual strength had undergone an overwhelming transformation within this half a month. Xiao Yang, who had just returned from the heavenly tomb, involuntarily shook his head as he looked at his surroundings, which had suddenly become completely silent. Although only half a month had passed in the outside world, 2 years had passed inside the tomb of the heavenly tomb. Hence, Xiao Yang was unsurprised the others would feel that it was inconceivable. It was not too difficult to imagine that 2 years of training and the seemingly endless vast and mighty spiritual strength of the heavenly tomb soul allowed him to reach this stage. How did you manage to do it? Yang Jin licked his lips and finally could not help but ask. Although he did not focus on training his soul, he had still trained for so many years. However, his soul had currently remained at the perfect heavenly state. There was still an unknown distance to the D-state soul. Ancestor Xiao Xian had given me a gift. Xiao Yang replied without giving a detailed explanation. Yang Jin and Lei Ying were startled after hearing Xiao Yang's words. They immediately smiled bitterly and shook their heads. The admiration they had for this person had reached the peak. This person was indeed worthy of once being the strongest person on the Dochi continent. Despite having been dead for so many years, he still possessed such a terrifying ability. Have you obtained the method to revive Xiao Xian? Jiyu Yuan also gradually calmed down. His eyes glanced at the space behind Xiao Yang and asked. Xiao Yang became quiet after hearing this. He shook his head and softly replied, Ancestor's soul fragment has already vanished from within the heavenly tomb. Jiyu Yuan was startled. He looked at Xiao Yang before sighing softly. Although he was unaware of just what had happened within the heavenly tomb, it was likely that Xiao Yang's soul advancement should be related to the vanishment of Xiao Yang's soul. His expression became a little complicated as he thought of this. His relationship with Xiao Xian was filled with both competition and the friendship between men. He knew that if Xiao Xian was not the clan head of the Xiao clan, it was very likely that the both of them would have been the best of friends. Unfortunately, the status of the both of them caused them to be destined not to be able to do as they wished. The clan was always at the top spot in their hearts. Tomorrow is the half-a-month dateline that the Han clan has mentioned. Jiyu Yuan crossed his fingers. He stared at Xiao Yang and asked, What do you plan to do? What else can I do? I do not have any choice for my father's sake. Xiao Yang shook his head. He also felt a little helpless. Regardless of what the case was, he must rescue his father. This was the promise he had made to his 2 brothers. Lei Ying and Yang Jin exchanged glances after hearing these words. They could only sigh. They were aware that no one could be blamed for this. The ancient jade in Xiao Yang's hands belonged to the Xiao clan. He had an absolute right to use it as he pleased. Moreover, the current Xiao Yang was also considered a powerful ally in their fight with the Han clan. This was especially the case after he had exited from the heavenly tomb. Even with their strength, they did not dare to underestimate this member of the younger generation. This was because they understood that by relying on the great strength of a D-state soul, Xiao Yang might not be afraid of them in a fight. Jiyu Yuan was not surprised at Xiao Yang's reply. He mused for a moment before speaking, In that case, let's leave tomorrow. The experts from our 3 clans will follow you this time around. Once your father safely arrives in your hands, all of us will attack together. We must snatch back the ancient jade or destroy it regardless of what happened. Jiyu Yuan's expression was strangely stern. This was because he understood that if the Han clan managed to collect all the ancient jades and open the Chu-Shi ancient god mansion, Han Tiandi would be able to obtain the opportunity to advance into the Do-D class. At that time, it was likely that no one in this world would be able to fight him. This so-called alliance of theirs was undoubtedly like an insect trying to shake a large tree when it came to facing an elite Do-D. It was not completely useless. Xiao Yang nodded in the face of this. With the 3 clans following him, he would be bolder in confronting the Han clan. Even though he had reached the DI state soul, it did not mean that Xiao Yang was able to fight with an ultimate expert like Han Tiandi. Moreover, the Han clan had many experts. Even if Han Tiandi did not show himself, just the Nihility devouring flame and the 4 demon saints of the Han clan would give him a headache. We have also dispatched the news to the Sky Mansion Alliance during this period of time. It is likely that your people will also reach the Burial Mountain range tomorrow. At that time, our 4 parties will unite. There is no need to fear the Han clan. Jiyu Dao said. Xiao Yang nodded again. Currently, the Sky Mansion Alliance had already begun to reveal their strength. Not only was there the ancestor of the Pill Tower and Xiao Chen, but there was also Xiao Yang, who had stepped into the DI state soul. In terms of strength, it was no longer inferior to the Yang and Lei clans. I have already personally built a spatial tunnel linking the Yang, Lei, and Jiyu clans while you were in the Heavenly Tomb. As long as any unexpected occurrence happens in any of the 3 realms, there would immediately be a feedback. The 3 clans has also entered into a state of high alert. All the elders who were in a retreat had been forcefully called out. They will gather together once an order is given. The miserable fate of the Ling, Shu, and Yarrow clans had gave the remaining 3 clans the greatest warning. Hence, the connection of the space this time around was completely done by Jiu Yuan. There should be no one in this world who can break the spatial barrier he had placed without alerting him. Even Hun Tiendi was unable to do it. Of course, this was unless the latter truly reached the Do D class. Since you have successfully exited your retreat, we are basically fully prepared. Now, we will just have to wait for tomorrow. Everyone's faces became grave after hearing Jiu Yuan's words. All of them clearly understood that there will be an earth-shaking big battle tomorrow. The scale of this big battle would likely be the biggest in the Dochi continent in thousands of years. Night covered the Jiu realm. Rays of cool moonlight poured down. Xiao Yang stood within the quiet small courtyard within the bamboo forest. His hands were behind him as his eyes looked at the sky. His expression was a little regretful and complicated. Without realizing it, it had been over a decade since he had arrived at the Central Plains from the Black Corner region. During this period of time, the youth from back then had lost all the tenderness on his face and slowly became the leader of the alliance, which dominated the entire Central Plains from someone who was unknown back then. Of course, the thing that had supported him to slowly progress to this stage was a simple obsession. It was to rescue his father, whom he had not met for decades. Father, tomorrow, we will reunite again. Xiao Yang clenched his hand. An ancient jade piece appeared in his hand. There was a weak spiritual light being emitted from the ancient jade. Xiao Yang's finger rubbed the spiritual light. After which, he lifted his head and inhaled a deep breath of air. Even though the current Xiao Yang had become a peak-level expert whom many on the continent looked up to, he was still unable to forget the doting and warm expression in his father's eyes in that small Wu-Tan city when the former genius who had turned into a useless fellow was being mocked by countless number of people. His father did not become even the least bit cold because of the evaluation from the outside world. Instead, he had reprimanded himself. A key reason that Xiao Yang was able to continue enduring the mockery for 3 years and end up blossoming was because of Xiao Zhon. Yang has now reached a far higher level than you have anticipated back then, Xiao Yang muttered to himself. He had trained hard and had finally reached the peak of this continent. However, he had not been able to meet the father whom he missed. Xiao Yang Jidi. A gentle delicate figure gently leaned on Xiao Yang's back while the latter was softly muttering. Soft hands hugged his waist while an extremely beautiful face was lifted under the moonlight, causing the moon itself to become a little dimmer. Uncle Xiao will be very pleased if he learns of your current achievement. Xiao Yang flipped his hand and grabbed Zun Er's hand. A moment later, he withdrew the emotion within his heart and turned around. After which, he grabbed the beauty into his embrace. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "When I was young, I have told father that I want Zun Er to become my wife. At that time, father had sternly warned me not to have such wishful thought. However, I can tell that he is extremely pleased and happy with Zun Er. After recusing father, I will get him to preside over a wedding for us." Zun Er's face gently leaned on Xiao Yang's chest. Her face was a little embarrassed upon hearing these words. However, her pretty eyes were filled with happiness. She gently nodded in an obedient manner. Xiao Yang's heart felt slightly hot as he looked at the delicate and beautiful flower like alluring pretty face. He laughed and his arm grabbed Zun Er's soft and seemingly boneless waist. He lowered his head in front of Zun Er's embarrassed eyes and killed the beautiful full moist lips. With a wave of his sleeve, the door of the room was automatically opened. His body flashed and he rushed into the room. A bang sounded and the door was tightly shut. The night was quiet while the room was filled with love. The originally quiet Jiu clan was filled with the sound of rushing wind when the first ray of sunlight scattered down from the sky on the next day. Many powerful auras rose swiftly. The big war was about to arrive. "Young miss, young master Xiao Yang, it is time." The elderly face of Ling Ying wore a smile as he stood in front of the bamboo house and looked at the tightly shut door. His voice was soft as he called out. Creak. The door squeaked and Xiao Yang slowly walked out from the room. The energy around the place seemed to have been vaguely disturbed after he stepped forward. Those deep dark black eyes appeared as though it was a divine being that ruled over the souls. Ling Ying involuntarily bowed lower under the scanning of those eyes. The pleased expression on the corner of his mouth became increasingly dense. In the distant past, the young man had still appeared a little tender. Yet, he had reached the peak within a short few decades. Even Ling Ying could only look up to him. "Young Mrs. Eyesight is extremely good," Ling Ying smiled warmly. He lifted his head and looked at the beauty quietly standing beside the young man. It was as though this brightest pearl of the Jiu clan would hide her dazzling brilliance only beside Xiao Yang and appear like a obedient little woman. She was just like the green-clothed young lady who was smiling and following being that youth in the Wu-Tang city decades ago. "Let's go. Oldling, goodbye." Xiao Yang lifted his head. He looked at the mountain in front of him. It was possible for him to detect a large group of powerful auras swiftly gathering at that spot. Moreover, spatial fluctuation was also being emitted from two other directions. It seemed that the experts from the Lei and Yang clan had also been mobilized. Xiao Yang did not wait after his words sounded. He held Zun'er's hand and flew towards the sky in a flash. Young Master Xiao Yang, I hope that you will return victorious. Ling Ying smiled and muttered as he watched the back of Xiao Yang duo. By the time Xiao Yang duo had arrived in the sky above the mountain, the area was already filled with many people. Numerous experts from the Jiyu clan rose into the sky and formed an orderly formation. Vast and mighty auras flowed acting like a single entity. That great mighty caused even Xiao Yang, who had stepped into the Di state soul, to involuntarily be surprised. Ha ha, have they arrived? Jiyu Yuan appeared beside the two of them after they appeared. His smiling eyes swept over them. An unknown feeling was present within his eyes. A moment later, he suddenly laughed. It seems that the both of you are really planning on allowing me to be a grandfather as soon as possible. Jiyu Yuan's sudden words caused Xiao Yang to be startled. It also led to Zun'er's face to become like a red apple in an instant, which appeared quite cute. Xiao Yang coughed dryly. It was unexpected that this Jiyu Yuan, who was filled with a mighty pressure, would actually utter such teasing words. All he could do was to helplessly shake his head. He quickly swept his eyes over the place and asked, "Is the Jiyu clan going out in force?" "It has not reached the extent of going out in force. However, we must definitely show our true strength. Our opponent is the extremely mysterious and unfathomable Han clan. We must not be careless." Jiyu Yuan sighed and said. Xiao Yang nodded slightly. His eyes swept over many experts and his heart was once again stunned by the Jiyu clan's strength. Jiyu Yuan was the strongest within the Jiyu clan. Under him was likely that black submerged king, Jiyu Lai, whom Xiao Yang had hardly met. Based on Xiao Yang's estimation, the strength of the black submerged king had likely reached the initial 8-star Dosheng class. Although he was a little weaker than the clan heads of the Yang and Lei clans, he was also a relatively powerful existence. Below the black submerged king, Jiyu Lai were the three immortals of the Jiyu clan. The three of them were at the 7-star Dosheng class and were similar in strength to the 4 demon saints of the Han clan. After the three immortals were the many elders of the Jiyu clan. Xiao Yang had never seen most of these elders. Clearly, they should be those who frequently undertook a retreat to train. His eyes had only briefly glanced past them when he discovered no less than 5 of them having reached the 4 or 5-star Dosheng class. If this lineup was placed within the central plains, it would really be able to clear any obstructions. It was not mere rumors that allowed the Jiyu clan to take over the Xiao clan and become the leader of the 8 ancient clans in name. Their strength is worthy of this position. Of course this was the case if one excluded the usually mysterious Han clan. Even Jiyu Yuan and the others did not dare to guarantee that they completely understand the true strength of this clan. The gazes of the many elders were also looking at Xiao Yang while the latter's eyes were sweeping over them. They smiled at him in a courteous manner. Although Xiao Yang's true ability was merely that of a 6-star Dosheng, his Di state soul had gave them an exceptional pressure. When those black eyes swept over them, it was as though their very souls had been penetrated. Naturally, they did not dare to underestimate Xiao Yang because of his age. An intense rushing wind sound was suddenly transmitted from the distant sky as Xiao Yang withdrew his gaze. A large group of black figures flashed over the sky. Finally, they appeared in the sky one after another. Many powerful auras immediately spread, causing the surrounding to tremble slightly. Ha ha, clan head Jiyu Yuan, young friend Xiao Yang, all the elites from my Yang clan has been mobilized this time around. Yang Jin smilingly cupped his hands together and faced Jiyu Yuan. Dozens of people stood behind him. All of them possessed powerful auras. Clearly, they were true experts. Xiao Yang merely randomly swept his eyes over them. After which, they were paused on a spot behind Yang Jin. There was an enchanting beautiful woman in red robes there. The beautiful woman had a tempting smile. Her middle-aged attractive appearance was filled with a matured allure. However, Xiao Yang could tell at a glance that this beautiful woman was the second strongest expert from the Yang clan other than Yang Jin. Her strength had actually also reached the 7-star Dosheng class and was similar to the 3 immortals of the Jiyu clan. The beautiful woman had also detected Xiao Yang's eyes when they paused on her body. She lifted her pretty eyes and an enchanting smile was lifted on her face. There seemed to be a strange fluctuation being emitted from within her eyes. That fluctuation vaguely caused one to become a little absent-minded. Soul-tempting technique? Xiao Yang felt extremely surprised at this fluctuation. It was rumored that this was a kind of spiritual skill from the ancient times. It was able to covertly control someone without anyone noticing it. This could be considered strange. However, this was usually effective against those with spiritual strength that were weaker than her. The spiritual level of this pretty woman was clearly only at the perfect heavenly state. Using this so-called soul-tempting technique in front of Xiao Yang while possessing a spiritual strength of this level was really a joke. Xiao Yang involuntarily smiled and shook his head after having these thoughts. He smilingly looked at the pretty woman. An invisible mighty pressure quietly spread from his brow and gently made contact with the fluctuation that the latter emitted from her eyes. That mysterious fluctuation from the pretty woman collapsed almost instantly upon this slight contact. Her delicate figure suddenly trembled. Shock appeared in her eyes as she looked at Xiao Yang. Her soul had actually trembled under the mighty pressure. D-state soul? The pretty woman was also an extremely experienced person. She quickly comprehended the situation after only a momentary shock. Her face immediately appeared as though she had seen a ghost and hurriedly stopped this little trick of hers. Haha, young friend Xiao Yang, this is my Yang's clan elder Huiling. Yang Jim at the side laughed after feeling the pressure. After which, he turned his head and laughed towards the pretty woman. I have already told you not to play with your spiritual strength or you will only end up eating a bitter pill. Yet, you don't believe me. It's Fairy Huiling, not Elder Huiling. The pretty woman curled her lips. Immediately, her eyes were watery as they looked at Xiao Yang and laughed. It is unexpected that he has reached the legendary DI state soul despite being only this young. One can really not just a book by its cover. The Xiao clan had produced a Xiao Shen back then. Now, it has produced another Xiao Yang. It seems the heavens has really blessed the Xiao clan. Those elders from the Yang clan behind Huiling also looked towards Xiao Yang in a stunned manner. DI state soul, even clan head Yang Jin in the Yang clan had not reached this level. Fairy Huiling has really overly praised me. I was really lucky. Xiao Yang smiled. That fairy manner of address caused the smile on Huiying's face to become a lot more brilliant. Clearly, she really liked this form of address. Everyone should understand what we are going to do today. I shall not say anything more. Everyone should clearly understand the strength of the Han clan in their hearts. If they were to fight, one must not underestimate the enemy. The members of the three clans became quiet after hearing Jiyu Yuan opened his mouth. They nodded in agreement. The former's reputation amongst the ancient clans was quite great. Moreover, his peak advance 9-star Do Sheng strength caused one to feel some fear and respect. Since everyone understands, let's get moving. Jiyu Yuan looked at Xiao Yang upon seeing this. The latter nodded slightly. He waved his hand and the many vast and powerful auras suddenly surged in this space. Go. Jiyu Yuan waved his sleeve after his voice sounded. The space in front of him cracked and formed a huge tunnel. He directly walked into it. The grave-looking Xiao Yang and Zun quickly followed. The experts from the three clans swiftly swarmed in. The spatial tunnel finally began to gradually scatter after the last person entered. Light figures swiftly rushed over the sky above the headquarters of the Sky Mansion Alliance on the Central Plains while the large army left the Jiyu realm. After which, they flew towards the northwestern region of the Central Plains from all directions. The entire Central Plains turned into an uproar when such a large number of experts left the Sky Mansion Alliance. Everyone understood that the only enemy faction which could cause the Sky Mansion Alliance to dispatch such a large number of experts was the extremely mysterious Han clan. The shadow of a battle enveloped the entire Central Plains. The Burial Sky mountain range stood at the northwestern region of the Central Plains. It was likely that many on the current continent were unfamiliar with this region. However, it was extremely well known to some of the older generation of the ancient clans. This was because this place was where the Han and Xiao clans had fought back then. The big war had once shook the entire Central Plains. There was an ancient battlefield deep within the mountain range. The battlefield was extremely vast and there was usually many magical beasts present. It could be considered a dangerous place. Hence, it appeared a little desolated. The ancient battlefield today appeared somewhat mysterious. Those magical beasts which used to roam unchecked had completely disappeared. It was actually impossible to find even a single magical beast on this huge battlefield. That scene appeared as though they had detected an earth-shaking big battle that was about to erupt in this place. A series of loud rushing wind sound suddenly resounded over the mountain range, which all was absent of all beast roars. One could see a large number of figures appearing in the horizon. Within a couple of flashes, they had appeared in this ancient battlefield. We have arrived. Jiyu Yuan's feet gently landed on the ground. His eyes swept over this battleground that had been turned into ruins. His eyes appeared a little complicated. The big war between the Han and Xiao clan back then had begun in this place. It was unexpected that their battle with the Han clan would also begin in this place thousands of years later. Search the mountain range. Many experts from the three clans rushed forward after everyone had just landed. They swiftly gave this mountain range a brief search as a precaution against any ambush that the Han clan had placed. It seems that the Han clan has yet to arrive. Yang Jin stepped forward. He looked at this somewhat desolated ancient battleground and remarked. Jiyu Yuan nodded slightly. Other than some magical beasts which were trembling under their pressure, there was no signs of any auras from the experts of the Han clan. Those from the Sky Mansion Alliance have arrived. Xiao Yang suddenly lifted his head and smilingly watched the northern sky. Some familiar ripples was vaguely emitted from that spot. Everyone looked in the direction after Xiao Yang's words sounded. However, they were unable to see anyone. Nevertheless, no one doubted Xiao Yang's words at this moment. Other than Jiyu Yuan, it was likely that no one else present could compare with Xiao Yang in terms of spiritual strength. Soon after everyone focused their eyes, some rushing wind sound had suddenly appeared in the northern sky. After which, a black mass of human figures rushed over from all directions. Their numbers was actually not any inferior to the number of people the three clans mobilized. It looks like the Sky Mansion Alliance has really dispatched all its strength. A surprise flashed over Yang Jin's and Lei Ying's eyes as they looked at the vast and mighty lineup. Although the Sky Mansion Alliance might be inferior to the Yang and Lei clans in terms of elites, the number of experts they possessed had reached a terrifying level. Haha, it seems that we are not late. Black shadows swiftly appeared in the mountain range from all directions in front of everyone's eyes. The person in front was naturally Yarrow Laro. Behind him were Kaylin, Little Fairy Doctor, Xiao Chen and the others. Even the ancestor of the Pill Tower and Old Man Shen Nong had followed. It seemed that Yarrow Laro had the others had been busy recruiting this elder, who possessed an extremely great attainment in alchemist skills. Both parties had naturally engaged in polite conversation as the large army gathered. The ancestor of the Pill Tower and Old Man Shen Nong could be considered to be familiar with the three clans. They naturally had a lot to talk now that they had met. Xiao Chen, on the other hand, merely glanced at those from the three clans before walking towards Xiao Yang. Are you all right? Xiao Chen glanced at Xiao Yang. His stern face revealed a smile as he asked. Xiao Yang also grinned in the face of this kin, who could also be considered his ancestor. He nodded. However, he did not tell Xiao Chen about what had happened to Xiao Xian at this moment. He understood that Xiao Chen and Xiao Xian were very close. If the former was to learn about this news, it would likely be a big blow to him. Hence, there was no harm in temporarily keeping it a secret. A fragrance suddenly pounced over while Xiao Yang was chatting with Xiao Chen. He lifted his head and saw Kaylin's bewitching cold face. Xiao Yang rubbed his nose and laughed dryly after seeing Kaylin's somewhat cold manner. Elder sister Kaylin, we have met again. Is Xiao Xiao doing well? Zun who was standing beside Xiao Yang, saw Kaylin slowly walking over. A ripple appeared in her eyes before she inquired with a gentle smile. Kaylin's cold face revealed a slight smile upon hearing this. He softly said, "Aye, she's well. However, she is bemoaning that a certain person being absent from home all the time." Zun smiled upon hearing those words. Xiao Yang by the side could only shake his head helplessly. It seemed that Kaylin was a little displeased that he had been missing for such a long time. Are your injuries healed? Kaylin curled her lips slightly after seeing Xiao Yang's manner. Her tone was suddenly a lot gentler. Although she was a little angry with Xiao Yang for not returning home despite being injured, rational thought still dominated her mind. That feeling was merely something that a woman normally had. I'm fully recovered, Xiao Yang smiled. He immediately swept his gaze around and asked, isn't the Alliance afraid of someone destroying its foundation with so many of its experts being dispatched? Yarrow Laro has said that this is very important to you, Kaylin replied. Xiao Yang was startled. His heart immediately became warm. With the arrival of the army from the Sky Mansion Alliance at the ancient battlefield, the entire mountain range had quickly become a lot more lively. Moreover, there were also many experts from the central plains outside of the mountain range who had been attracted because of the activity. However, they did not dare to step into the mountain range after arriving at the burial Sky Mountain range. This was because they could sense that the auras gathered in this place had reached a terrifying level. If they were to be dragged into a battle at such a level, it was very likely that they would end up dying. After a brief interaction following the gathering both parties, everyone once again became cautious. Their sight spread over the place and encompassed the entire burial Sky Mountain range. Any activity present would be immediately feedback to Xiao Yang's group. Time slowly passed amidst this wait. The moment the bright sun reached its peak, Xiao Yang and Jiyu Yuan, who had been sitting on a huge rock, suddenly opened their eyes together. A low voice caused everyone to become suddenly tensed. They have arrived. The interior of the mountain suddenly revealed layers of black fog after the voices of those two sounded. Black fog lingered over the place. Finally, it turned into a huge spatial tunnel. Numerous mighty sinister auras surged from it. Black fog surged in the sky and directly cut off the sunlight. Immediately, the temperature of the surroundings fell. A kind of dark and cold aura spread. This burial Sky Mountain range has not been so lively for a long time. The black fog churned in the sky and Hun Tiandi's figure appeared from nowhere. His eyes swept over the large army below. A smile appeared on his face as he spoke. The Nihility Devouring Flame, the 4 demon saints of the Hun clan and many other Hun clan's experts also flashed and appeared behind Hun Tiendi. It seemed that the Hun clan was also clearly aware of the battle today. Hence, it had also maneuvered quite a lot of experts. Hun Tiendi, return the ancient jades of our 3 clans. Otherwise, we will definitely attack your Jiyu realm in the future. Lei Ying let out a cold cry. His expression sunk after seeing Hun Tiendi appeared. Losing the ancient jade had caused him to be extremely furious. Naturally, he could not suppress the anger in his heart now that he had seen the other party attacking the Hun realm. There is perhaps no one with the strength to do so in the present world. Hun Tiendi laughed out loud in the face of Lei Ying's furious cry. He immediately ignored the former as his eyes were thrown towards Xiao Yang. He spoke in a faint voice. What do you plan to do? Are you going to use the ancient jade to exchange for the person you want, or are you going to forcefully snatch him? I wish to meet my father. Xiao Yang's eyes did not shift away as he stared at Hun Tiendi and slowly said. Hun Tiendi glanced at Xiao Yang upon hearing this. He immediately waved his hand and the space behind him fluctuated. The sound of chains soon sounded. After which, a prison, which was formed from black fog, appeared in the sky. There was an elderly figure seated within. Many chains tightly entangled around him like poisonous snakes. Xiao Yang's eyes were focused on that elderly figure the moment the prison appeared. His body involuntarily trembled. Although it was a little blurry, the blood flowing within Xiao Yang immediately told him that the figure was indeed his father, Xiao Zhon. Decades had passed. The high-spirited clan head from back then had become this white-haired elderly figure. His originally strong body had become skinny and frail during this time. He had been imprisoned for decades. Xiao Yang's body continued to tremble. He looked at the heavy metal chains on that elderly figure. Waves after waves of wild murderous intent churned within his heart. He clenched his fist tightly, allowing his nails to press into his palm. Droplets of blood rolled out from them and fell. Hun Tiendi, if I have the opportunity to do you, I will turn your Hun clan upside down. Xiao Yang's blood-red eyes suddenly turned towards Hun Tiendi. His voice was hoarse and low. At the same time, an incomparably frightening spiritual fluctuation spread in wave-like fashion with him at the center. Immediately, dark clouds churned and thunder roared. D-State Soul? Those experts from the Hun clan, who had just gave Xiao Yang a smile of disdain, suddenly had stiffened expressions after the spiritual fluctuation was emitted. Even Hun Tiendi finally had a slightly altered expression. Clearly, he did not expect that Xiao Yang's spiritual strength had actually soared until such an extent within a short half a month. What a great Xiao Yang! Hun Tiendi's voice was low and deep. There was a faint murderous intent within it. The current Xiao Yang had finally caused him to feel a little threatened. Xiao Yang. The elderly figure, being heavily restrained by the metal chain within the cage, suddenly trembled because of Hun Tiendi's words. He slowly lifted his head. A turbid expression appeared in his eyes. Finally, they paused on the black-clothed young man, who was floating in the sky a short distance away. His body stiffened immediately. Tears rolled down from his eyes. His hoarse elderly voice was filled with an incomparable sadness. Yang. This video will end here.